Have you ever paused, really paused, to consider what truly designs the very blueprints of our understanding? The invisible architectures that shape basically everything, from the legal systems governing our societies to the fundamental paradigms that define scientific discovery itself. We often dive deep into specific fields, right? Meticulously examining their intricate details. But what about the meta level? The grand design sort of that underpins it all. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating journey. We're using what our source material presents as the river of reality model. Picture a majestic flowing system. It's hierarchically structured. It begins with these foundational physical currents: energy, material, and information. That's tier one, the bedrock of existence, basically. From these foundational flows, life itself emerges. So that leads us to the intricate biological organization of life, which the model calls tier two. And then, ascending further in complexity, we arrive at these expansive sociocultural flows that define human civilization: science, art, religion, economics, politics. That's our tier three. It's a compelling journey, isn't it? A journey of increasing complexity, a logical, emergent progression where each level builds upon and refines the one before it. Okay, so for this deep dive, our mission is to explore the capstone of this entire hierarchical model: philosophy. Now, this isn't just, another stream joining the river. It's not just another discipline to add to the list. The source material presents philosophy as something different, a truly transcendental meta system. It has this singular and incredibly powerful function sitting right at the very apex of this whole hierarchy.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, I think, is that philosophy doesn't just add another layer to this already complex structure. It fundamentally transforms the entire system. It changes it from, say, a linear progression into something far more dynamic, more self-aware. It generates what the model calls the flow of consciousness, this profound emergent capacity a complex system gains for self-reflection. And this isn't simply about piling up more knowledge. It's achieved through the rigorous study of wisdom, which in turn produces these powerful frameworks. And these frameworks, they don't just sit there passively. They create a robust recursive feedback loop.
The feedback loop. Right. And this feedback loop is absolutely essential, isn't it? Because it acts like a mirror, kind of, turning the system's attention back onto its own structure, its own purpose, its own operational principles. It's how this linear, often one-way river of reality evolves into something far more dynamic, recursive, and truly self-reflecting. Our source calls it the ocean of self-awareness. Imagine a complex system like human society that can not only observe its own nature, but understand it, critique it, and intentionally choose its future, consciously steering its own course. That's the profound level of inquiry we're exploring today. It's pretty mind-bending stuff.
Absolutely. And this raises a really important question for you, the listener, especially those of you deeply embedded in STEM fields. How does this highest level of organization not just passively observe reality, but actively shape it? How does it influence our very understanding of the universe and, well, our place within it? We'll delve into how this philosophical lens is far from being just some abstract pursuit confined to ivory towers. Instead, it offers critical insights for anyone seeking to truly understand the foundations of their field, the very rules of the game they play, and the profound implications of their work.
Okay, so if philosophy is truly this capstone, this architect of self-awareness, what kind of architecture allows it to reflect on the entire system? Let's start by trying to understand what our source material calls a second-order discipline, which, as you said, is a fundamental shift from what many of us in STEM are maybe used to.
Right. That's a powerful distinction because for many of us, particularly in STEM, our work involves these deep dives into specific phenomena, the what of the universe. So what exactly does it mean for philosophy to be a second order discipline? How does this fundamentally reorient our perspective? Can you help us visualize that shift?
Yeah, walk us through that.
Okay. If we connect this to the bigger picture, right? A first order discipline, let's say biology or economics, it primarily studies a specific part of the world. It focuses on the what. A biologist meticulously observes, analyzes the processes of life, cellular mechanisms, ecological interactions, genetic expressions. An economist examines markets, human behavior, supply and demand, policy impacts. These are disciplines deeply focused on direct phenomena. But a philosopher operating at a second order, well, they don't study life itself or the economy directly in the same way. Instead, they elevate their inquiry. They ask questions like, what constitutes a valid scientific explanation of life? Or what are the fundamental assumptions biologists are making when they design an experiment or interpret their data? They might ask, is economic growth an inherently moral good? What are the ethical implications of certain market structures? This is the system turning inward, examining its own operating system, its methods, its concepts, its foundational assumptions.
Ah, Okay, that's a brilliant way to put it. So for a first-order scientist, it's like being deeply engrossed in observing every intricate move in a complex chess game, analyzing the strategies, the pieces, the board itself. But for a second-order philosopher, the focus shifts completely. They zoom out. They analyze the very rules of chess themselves, the underlying logic, the history of the game, maybe even the psychology of the players, or the ultimate purpose of playing chess at all. It's a meta-perspective, looking not just at the picture, but at the lens through which we see the picture.
Precisely. That distinction, observing how we observe that, really clarifies it. And this theoretical architecture for self-observation, this capacity to reflect on the reflection itself, it can actually be described with great precision using advanced systems theory. And this is where things become particularly illuminating, I think, for a STEM audience, because it provides a rigorous analytical framework for understanding this meta level of inquiry.
Okay, systems theory. So one of the key concepts the source introduces here, which sounds like it resonates deeply with systems theory, is second-order cybernetics. Now, many of us in technical fields, we're familiar with the basic idea of cybernetics, right? The study of control and communication of systems. Think feedback loops in engineering or biological regulation, maybe climate models. How does adding second order fundamentally alter that understanding? What crucial layer does it add to how we perceive systems?
Right. So, first-order cybernetics, as our source notes, is indeed the study of observed systems. In this traditional view, the observer is generally positioned as an external objective party, like an engineer observing a machine, trying to optimize its performance, or a scientist observing an experiment. The observer is presumed to be separate from the system they are studying, a detached entity. But Heinz von Forster, a brilliant mind, one of the progenitors of this field, he coined second-order cybernetics as the cybernetics of observing systems. And this is a profoundly reflexive practice. The observer is explicitly included as an integral participant within the system. The very act of observation, the choices made by the observer, their biases, the conceptual tools, their presence, all of it becomes part of the system being studied, and it's subject to examination.
Wow. Okay, so if the observer is now inside the system, how does that fundamentally change the questions we ask? Are we still just asking what is the system doing, or does it force this much deeper, maybe more personal interrogation of our own role, our own biases, and how our chosen framework influences what we even perceive the system to be doing?
Exactly. It forces a fundamental shift in perspective, a really big one. Instead of solely focusing on what is the system doing, we now must also ask, how are we constructing our understanding of what the system is doing? And crucially, how is our presence or our chosen framework influencing that understanding? It compels an examination of our own biases, our tools, our very presence, the theoretical lenses we apply. It's a constant, iterative questioning of the frame itself, not just the picture within the frame. And philosophy, in this model, is presented as the system's inherent mechanism for achieving this second-order perspective. It's how a society doesn't just operate under its existing laws or values, but actively questions the very foundations of its truth, its justice, its value systems. I mean, think about how critical this concept is in fields like quantum physics, right? Where the observer's role is inherently part of the observed reality, not separate from it. Or in social sciences, where the researcher's perspective can significantly influence the social phenomenon being studied. Philosophy provides the critical tools for navigating this complex reflexivity in all domains. It pushes us beyond mere observation to self-observation.
Self-observation. That leads nicely to another powerful concept the source brings up for understanding this self-reflection, especially relevant to the idea of a flow of consciousness, and that's autopoiesis. Now, you mentioned this term was coined by biologists Maturana and Varela to describe self-creating systems. How does self-creating apply to something as abstract as consciousness? What does it really mean for our thoughts, our ideas, to be autopoietic?
Yeah, autopoiesis, it's a fascinating concept. An autopoietic system is one that continuously produces the very components that constitute it. And by doing so, it maintains its own organizational integrity, its identity, in a dynamic, ongoing process. The classic, maybe most intuitive biological example is a living cell. It produces the proteins and lipids that form its membrane, which in turn defines it as a cell, regulates what enters and leaves. These internal processes, regulated by the membrane, then lead to the production of more proteins and lipids, and so on. It's a self-generating, self-sustaining loop, a closed loop of production. It regenerates its own components and structure from within, constantly adapting while preserving its core identity. It isn't just reacting to its environment, it's actively creating and recreating itself.
Okay, so applying that profound idea to consciousness. The flow of consciousness operates as an autopoietic system because its components aren't physical, like proteins or lipids. Instead, its fundamental components are Thoughts, ideas, questions, insights. Is that right? So each thought isn't just a discrete, isolated unit. It's dynamically generated by prior thoughts, maybe in response to them. And then it immediately becomes the basis, the raw material, the catalyst for future thoughts. It's an ongoing, generative, self-reinforcing process, constantly building upon itself.
Precisely. That self-producing, self-sustaining quality is what gives the flow of consciousness its unique character. It's a stable yet incredibly dynamic and emergent level of this river of reality. It's capable of not just observing all the other flows, energy, material, biological, sociocultural flows, but crucially also observing itself. It's not just a passive collection of static ideas, it's a living, dynamic process. It perpetuates itself through continuous internal generation and allows for observation of itself. Consider what this autopoietic nature of consciousness implies for something like learning, or even the development of artificial intelligence. If our thoughts are continuously self-generating, not just reacting to external stimuli, how does that redefine what understanding truly means? Does it suggest that true innovation in your field, for you, the listener, isn't just about processing external data, but about nurturing this internal, self-sustaining flow of inquiry and reflection? It highlights that our very capacity for understanding, for problem-solving, for critical thinking, for self-awareness, it's inherently a self-generating and self-sustaining system, constantly evolving, yet maintaining its essential nature.
That's fascinating. Okay, building on this idea of self-reflection and the unique role of philosophy, our source makes a really crucial distinction. It says, while science studies truth, philosophy studies wisdom. And you mentioned earlier, this immediately resonates with the classical philosophical traditions, stretching back millennia.
Yes, it absolutely does. This reflects a classical understanding of intellectual virtues, most clearly articulated by foundational figures like Plato and Aristotle in ancient Greece. They meticulously distinguished between episteme and sophia. And understanding this difference is fundamental, really, to grasping the unique function of philosophy in our deep dive today. Without this distinction, I think the full scope of philosophy's transformative role is often missed.
Okay, so episteme. That's often translated as scientific knowledge or verifiable truth, the kind of knowledge we rigorously pursue through empirical observation, data collection, controlled experiments, and STEM fields.
Exactly. Episteme, which aligns with truth or data in our model, is knowledge of facts, observable phenomena, established principles within a specific circumscribed domain. It perfectly aligns with the scientific output of data in the river of reality model. It is knowing that something is the case, the verifiable empirical truths about the world that constitute the flow of information. Think of all the precise measurements, the empirical data generated by experiments, the established scientific laws, the detailed observations from biology, chemistry, physics. That's episteme. It's indispensable, obviously, for building a factual, reliable understanding of the world around us.
Right, but then there's Sophia, which is the source calls wisdom and links to frameworks. This implies something higher, something more profound than just knowing facts or accumulating data. What is that crucial difference? What makes it wisdom?
It is indeed a more comprehensive, more foundational understanding. For Aristotle, Sophia wasn't just knowledge of facts or even of methods. It was knowledge of the ultimate causes and first principles of reality. It was about understanding why things are a certain way, not just what they are or how they function. Wisdom isn't about knowing a single data point or even a multitude of data points. It's about grasping its meaning within a holistic context, understanding its implications, its interconnections across different domains, and maybe its ultimate purpose within the larger system. It's the difference between, say, knowing the precise data points of global temperature rise, atmospheric CO2 concentrations, sea level change that's crucial episteme, and understanding the ethical, economic, societal, existential implications of climate change, critically examining its ultimate causes, evaluating our collective moral responsibilities, envisioning potential systemic solutions. That's Sophia.
Okay, I see. So philosophy's core function, then, is to take that vast, intricate ocean of data flowing from science, to consider the emotional, the aesthetic connections revealed through art, and to integrate outputs from all the other flows in the river of reality. And with all of that as its input, it then asks the ultimate why questions. It grapples with the fundamental nature of reality itself, its metaphysics, the nature of knowledge epistemology, and the nature of values and morals ethics. These are the core engines of its inquiry.
This is precisely where philosophy truly ascends to its second-order role, becoming the capstone. It doesn't just add more information to the existing scientific or cultural flows. It seeks to contextualize all information, to provide the interpretive lens, the comprehensive understanding, the ultimate meaning for that vast ocean of data. For you, the listener, this means understanding that while scientific facts and technical capabilities are incredibly powerful, absolutely essential for progress, their ultimate meaning, their ethical application, their societal implications often rely on a deeper philosophical inquiry into why they matter, why we pursue certain knowledge over others, and how that knowledge impacts our shared reality. It's about moving from expertise in the what's and how to, well, wisdom in the why and how it all fits together within the grand scheme of human existence.
Okay, this is where the rubber really hits the road, isn't it? Transitioning from abstract understanding to concrete impact. The source tells us the tangible output of this profound study of wisdom is the creation of frameworks, these overarching conceptual models, these operating systems for sociocultural reality. It suggests that a change in the philosophical source code literally compiles into a new version of society, rewriting how we live, how we think, how we interact. That's a pretty bold claim, implying philosophy isn't just theory, but a powerful, active engine of societal change.
It might seem abstract, yeah, this idea of philosophical source code, but the impact is profoundly concrete and observably transformative throughout history. These frameworks are not merely academic curiosities or abstract theories. They are the invisible yet powerful architectures that guide how we organize ourselves, how we conduct science, what we collectively value, how we govern. They are the underlying logic that structures our institutions, shapes our interactions, and often dictates our collective destiny.
Can you give us some concrete historical examples of these philosophical frameworks shaping society, especially in areas like politics and commerce? Show us the code in action.
Absolutely. Let's consider John Locke's philosophy of natural rights, for instance. His revolutionary ideas from the late 17th century concerning the inherent rights to life, liberty, and property. They were far more than just abstract thoughts debated in, Enlightenment salons. They provided the foundational code, the very operating system for the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And beyond political governance, Locke's emphasis on property and individual agency also furnished the moral and intellectual justification for capitalist commerce, fundamentally shaping the economic and political landscape that emerged in the Western world and subsequently influenced much of the globe. His ideas quite literally became the blueprint for entire political and economic systems that continue to shape our world today.
Wow. Okay. And even more recently, the source mentions John Rawls' A Theory of Justice from the 20th century. How did his philosophical framework provide a software update, as you put it earlier?
Rawls, indeed, provided a major software update to this governance code in the 20th century, prompting a profound reevaluation of justice and fairness in modern society. His groundbreaking framework of the veil of ignorance, it wasn't just a theoretical construct. It was designed as a thought experiment to imagine and then create a more just society by stripping away personal biases when conceptualizing fairness. Participants in his thought experiment are asked to design society's rules without knowing their own position within it, whether they be rich or poor, male or female, healthy or sick. This forces a focus on truly equitable principles, and its influence is vast. From reshaping legal theory and constitutional interpretation to directly impacting public policy debates on social safety nets, healthcare reform, economic equity. These are direct philosophical interventions that profoundly reshape the lived reality and opportunities for millions, moving beyond simple notions of equality to a deeper understanding of equity.
That's incredibly clear. Okay, what about science itself? Our STEM audience knows that science is constantly evolving. How does philosophy create frameworks there? Perhaps in less obvious ways, guiding the very progress of scientific discovery.
This is particularly relevant, I think, for our STEM audience. It speaks directly to how scientific progress truly occurs. The physicist-turned-philosopher Thomas Kuhn, in his seminal 1962 work, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, challenged the traditional view, the view that science simply accumulates facts linearly, building brick by brick. Instead, he showed that science operates within paradigms. These are comprehensive constellations of shared beliefs, fundamental assumptions, values, methodologies that define an entire scientific field at a given time. Think of it as the agreed-upon operating system, the philosophical framework for a scientific discipline.
So a paradigm shift, like the dramatic transition from Newtonian physics to Einsteinian physics, that isn't just discovering a new law or a new piece of data. It's a much more profound, revolutionary change in the fundamental philosophical assumptions about the very nature of reality, space, time, gravity, and consequently, it alters the very rules for studying it, for validating evidence, for what even counts as acceptable knowledge. It's a complete shift in the underlying framework that guides scientific inquiry itself, changes the questions scientists ask and the methods they use.
Exactly. It's a philosophical reorientation, a profound reevaluation of first principles. That then enables new scientific theories and discoveries that were previously inconceivable or dismissed as anomalies, or simply not within the conceptual framework of the old paradigm. Kuhn's work highlights how philosophical frameworks dictate not just what we study in science, but more critically, how we study it, what questions are considered legitimate, and what counts as valid knowledge within the scientific enterprise. It's the invisible hand, you could say, the meta-level program that guides scientific progress and allows for revolutionary breakthroughs.
Right. The source also touches on how philosophy impacts our values in areas like religion and art, shaping our collective understanding of meaning, beauty, our place in the world. How deeply do these philosophical shifts permeate our cultural fabric?
Oh, they permeate it completely. I mean, take the European Enlightenment, for instance. 17th, 18th centuries. This was a profound philosophical movement. It championed reason, individual autonomy, critical inquiry over traditional authority, superstition, divine revelation. This philosophical shift didn't just stay in academic circles, it directly reconfigured the flow of hierarchy in society, moving from a system based on the unquestionable divine right of kings and inherited status to one based on a social contract among citizens, where political legitimacy derived from the consent of the governed and the rights of the individual.
And that philosophical shift extended directly to culture, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like the dominant artistic styles and what was valued in art. It wasn't just about what was written in treatises. It flowed into paintings, sculptures.
It absolutely did. This philosophical reorientation dramatically altered the flow of connection, how people related to each other, what ideals they expressed, how they perceived beauty and purpose. It led directly to the rise of neoclassicism in art, which consciously promoted civic duty, moral virtue, rational order, often drawing clear inspiration from the perceived purity and discipline of ancient Greek and Roman ideals. This was a direct aesthetic and moral counterpoint to the aristocratic extravagance, emotional intensity, ornate complexity of the preceding Baroque and Rococo styles. Art became a tool for civic instruction, for moral elevation, rather than just religious or monarchical glorification. For you, the listener, this demonstrates how deeply intertwined philosophical shifts are with the very fabric of our culture, our modes of expression, our values, the entire visual world around us. It's a subtle but immensely powerful, pervasive influence. Shapes everything we create and appreciate.
Okay, we've discussed how philosophy creates these frameworks, these operating systems for society and knowledge. But then what happens? The source talks about the production of frameworks energizing the system's ultimate emergent property, a reflexive feedback loop. This is the mechanism by which consciousness actively shapes the system, leading us into, well, maybe the most dynamic part of our deep dive. So how do our thoughts, born from these frameworks, actually change reality?
This is indeed the core dynamic, the one that transforms the linear one-way river into a dynamic, recursive ocean. The influential economist and philosopher George Soros articulated this principle of reflexivity beautifully, particularly within human systems like financial markets. He identified two fundamental functions of thought in human agents. First, the cognitive function, our attempt to understand the world as it is, to form accurate beliefs about it. And second, the manipulative function, our capacity to impact the world through our actions, based on those very beliefs and understandings.
And the key, as Soros pointed out, is that in truly reflexive systems, these two functions don't operate independently. They constantly interfere with each other. Like your example, a belief that a stock is undervalued that's cognitive leads to buying it manipulative. That increased demand then drives up its price, thus changing the reality that was being observed in the first place. The observation itself, or the action based on it, changes the observed. It's a loop.
Exactly. This feedback loop, where thought influences reality and that changed reality influences further thought, that is the very engine of the flow of consciousness. The act of asking the philosophical question why is what fundamentally triggers and sustains this reflexive process. It moves beyond the purely operational how questions of other disciplines. How do we build this bridge? How do we sequence this gene? How does this economic model work? Instead, why challenges the foundational axioms, the implicit assumptions, the ultimate purposes that those how questions take for granted. This practice of reflexive inquiry, this deep and persistent questioning of foundations, it has demonstrably been the engine of progress throughout human history, forcing societies to constantly reevaluate, adapt, and evolve.
That's a powerful idea. The simple act of asking why, being an engine of progress. Can you give us some historical examples of this why in action, where this reflexive inquiry fundamentally shifted human understanding and societal structures in a really tangible way?
Certainly. One of the earliest and maybe most profound examples that comes to mind is the Socratic method. Socrates' famous declaration, "The unexamined life is not worth living," embodies this principle perfectly. His method of cooperative, probing dialogue. It wasn't just about winning an argument or showing off intellectually, it was a practical engine, forcing a critical self-examination of the values, beliefs, assumptions that undergird our actions and shape our lives. By relentlessly asking, why do you believe that? Or what do you truly mean by justice? He initiated a reflexive process. It led to deeper understanding and, often, a humbling realization of ignorance, which is the first step towards wisdom. This forced Athenians to reflect on their own democracy, their values.
Right, the constant questioning.
Then, moving forward into the 20th century, consider critical theory, especially from the Frankfurt School. This movement institutionalized the Socratic impulse on a societal scale, defining its explicit purpose as critiquing prevailing social, economic, political structures to free human beings from various forms of domination and oppression. It analyzes what is in society the existing power dynamics, ideological structures, cultural norms, not just to describe them, but to rigorously guide a discussion of what ought to be. It's a deliberate philosophical intervention designed to trigger societal reflexivity and intentional transformative change, pushing society to self-correct its own flaws.
And you mentioned one more.
Yes, building on earlier ideas, the philosopher Jürgen Habermas identified the public sphere as the crucial arena for this societal self-reflection. This is the conceptual space comprising everything from coffee houses and salons in past centuries to modern-day media, online forums, public debates, where private individuals engage in rational, critical debate, openly discussing matters of public concern. The goal is to form a collective public opinion that can then legitimately guide the state and shape collective action. It's the practical, institutionalized manifestation of a society engaging in collective philosophical inquiry to direct its own future, to become truly self-aware and self-governing. For you, the listener, these historical examples underscore that why is not just some abstract academic exercise. It's a foundational tool for societal progress, self-correction, and the intentional evolution of human civilization.
This is all incredibly compelling, and it truly brings us to the present moment, doesn't it? Moving us into the next phase, the conscious hand on the tiller, the feedback loop in action. This reflexive feedback loop isn't merely theoretical or confined to history. The source makes it clear its operation is visibly impacting the proactive governance of today's most powerful, rapidly emerging technologies. This is where it directly impacts many of you listening, working in STEM fields, particularly on the cutting edge.
This truly highlights the conscious hand on the tiller aspect of a self-aware society. Humanity is increasingly grappling with its newfound, unprecedented power over the fundamental flows of reality, from the atomic scale of matter to the biological code of life itself. And philosophy, through its capacity for second-order reflection, is providing the essential mechanism for guiding that power, for making intentional, wise choices, rather than simply letting technological progress unfold without critical oversight or ethical consideration. It's the profound difference between merely observing the powerful currents of a river and consciously steering the ship of civilization through those currents with foresight and purpose.
Okay, let's take CRISPR, the revolutionary gene editing technology, as a prime and very recent example of this philosophical feedback loop in action. How did humanity consciously grapple with this profound new power?
Right, CRISPR. The development of gene editing technologies like CRISPR granted humanity direct, powerful control over the biological code of Tier 2, the very blueprint of life itself. This immediately, and rightly so, triggered a global philosophical and ethical inquiry of immense proportions. The implications were just staggering. Editing human embryos, curing genetic diseases, potentially altering the human germline forever. International bodies like the World Health Organization, the WHO, swiftly convened multidisciplinary committees. These committees involved not just leading geneticists and biologists, but crucially ethicists, philosophers, sociologists, legal experts, even theologians. Their mandate was to weigh fundamental principles. Beneficence, doing good, non-maleficence, avoiding harm, justice, equitable access and impact, autonomy, individual choice and consent in the face of this unprecedented new power to reshape human biology.
And what was the tangible outcome of all that deliberation? It wasn't just talk, was it? There were concrete actions, frameworks established.
Precisely. This extensive deliberation, this global philosophical inquiry, produced new governance frameworks almost immediately. A clear, tangible instance was the global moratorium on heritable human genome editing, meaning editing genes that would be passed down to future generations, effectively altering the human gene pool. Now, this was not a scientific discovery. It was a collective philosophical decision, born from intensive reflection about what humanity should and should not do with its newfound biological power. It's a clear, concrete instance of the system humanity consciously reflecting upon its newfound power over life itself and making intentional choices about its application, prioritizing wisdom and foresight over unchecked scientific possibility. It wasn't just about what could be done technically, it was a collective philosophical decision about what should be done, grounded in our shared values and understanding of human dignity.
That's a powerful example. The source also points to nanotechnology is another one. Here we're talking about humanity's increasing control over Tier 1 material, manipulating matter at the atomic and molecular scale, essentially architecting reality from the ground up. How did philosophical foresight play a role there?
Indeed. From its earliest stages, even before widespread application, the rise of nanotechnology, the ability to engineer materials at the nanometer scale, has been accompanied by deliberate, proactive consideration of its ethical, legal, and societal implications. ELSI, as it's often called, this wasn't an afterthought, which is key. Concerns about safety, like the environmental impact of nanoparticles, privacy, how ubiquitous nanosensors might impact surveillance, equity, who benefits from these powerful new technologies, who might be left behind, potential for dual-use military versus civilian applications. All of these are fundamentally philosophical questions about values, consequences, responsibility. And they have been integrated into the research process from, well, pretty much day one. This proactive reflection, driven by philosophical foresight, has led to the development of a robust framework of responsible innovation.
This responsible innovation framework, it sounds like a massive shift from previous technological revolutions, integrating ethical review, philosophical considerations directly into the design phase of research. Rather than waiting until problems emerge and then reacting, it's like trying to guide development before it spins out of control.
It is a massive and truly pivotal shift, and maybe a testament to the system's increasing self-awareness and capacity for foresight. This approach actively seeks to anticipate potential harms and maximize societal benefits by integrating ethical and philosophical reflection directly into the research and development pipeline. It demonstrates the system's self-reflective capacity extending all the way down to the material level, to how we intentionally architect the very rules for building the physical world of the future. For you, the listener, especially if you're involved in cutting-edge R&D, these aren't distant philosophical debates. They are active, ongoing processes directly shaping the very frontiers, the very methodologies of your scientific and engineering endeavors, fundamentally altering what is permissible, what's prioritized, and how innovation itself is defined and guided.
Wow. Okay, this all brings us to a really profound structural validation for philosophy's position at the apex of this hierarchy. And that's the very name of the Doctor of Philosophy, PhD. It's fascinating how the structure of modern academia provides this powerful real-world validation for the model. The name itself holds so much meaning, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The term philosophy in PhD isn't just a historical relic or some linguistic quirk we've simply carried forward. It is used in its original Greek sense of philosophia, which means love of wisdom. This isn't just a label. It points to the profound underlying meaning, the core intellectual virtue that the degree is meant to certify across all disciplines, from astrophysics to ancient literature. Every PhD, regardless of discipline, is fundamentally about the pursuit of Sophia. Wisdom.
That's a critical point, because to earn a PhD, you're not just demonstrating mastery of a vast body of existing knowledge in a field. That's usually what a master's degree signifies, a deep command of the current state of knowledge. The PhD marks a distinct transition from merely mastering what is known to expanding the boundaries of that knowledge. Through original independent research, contributing something truly new and significant.
Exactly. To earn a PhD in physics or literature or computer science, engineering, any field, it's to demonstrate that one has become, in essence, a philosopher of your domain. It signifies an ascent from the first-order practice of a discipline applying existing knowledge and techniques to solve problems to a second-order reflection upon its foundational assumptions, its methodologies, its inherent limits, its broader implications. You're not just doing science, you're thinking about science, about its principles, about its future direction, about its place within the larger human enterprise. It's the moment you stop just building the structure and start questioning the blueprints themselves.
So in this model of the river of reality transforming into the ocean of self-awareness, the PhD is the academic embodiment of the flow of consciousness itself. It certifies a capacity for systemic self-awareness within a specific field, the ability not just to operate proficiently within the existing framework of that discipline, but to critique that framework, challenge its underlying assumptions, and crucially, to create the new frameworks of the future that will guide subsequent generations of researchers. It's about being a conscious, reflective agent of disciplinary evolution.
And this raises an important question for all of us, doesn't it? Especially for those pursuing or holding advanced degrees. If your highest academic achievement is universally termed a Doctor of Philosophy, what does that tell you about the underlying universal skill being recognized and celebrated across all disciplines? It's not just about specialized knowledge. It's the capacity for foundational, critical, and truly creative thinking that transcends any single specialized body of knowledge. It's the capacity to engage in second-order reflection, to question the unquestioned, and to guide the future trajectory of knowledge itself, ensuring that progress is not just accumulation, but also wise direction.
Wow. We've certainly taken a deep dive today, following this river of reality from its foundational physical currents all the way up to its culmination in philosophy. We've seen how philosophy isn't just another academic subject, another stream among many, but a truly transcendental metasystem that kind of redefines the entire landscape of human understanding and action.
Right. As the study of wisdom, philosophy provides that holistic understanding that transcends specialized knowledge. It connects the dots, provides essential context for the vast output of all other disciplines, and as the producer of frameworks, it provides the very architecture of thought, the operating systems that make specialized inquiry even possible across all the other tiers of the river of reality.
And in generating the flow of consciousness, philosophy endows the entire system, humanity itself, with that powerful, reflexive feedback loop. This enables it to actively question its own purpose, to analyze its own structure, and ultimately to choose its direction with intentionality and, hopefully, wisdom.
This final flow completes that long journey, from the determined currents of the physical world, through the intricate self-organization of life and the complex dynamics of culture. The linear river, having carved its path through biology and society, finally reaches this vast, dynamic ocean of self-awareness, where its unidirectional path transforms into a recursive, interconnected whole. A system capable of observing its own patterns, understanding its own depths, and consciously choosing its own course into the future.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Working within your own specialized fields, whether it's engineering, biology, computer science, or any other domain. If human society, through philosophy, is indeed achieving this profound level of self-awareness and gaining this unprecedented ability to intentionally choose its future, as we see with our attempts to govern gene editing and nanotechnology, what new responsibilities does this incredible power entail for all of us as individuals contributing to this self-aware collective?
Yeah, that really is the provocative thought to leave with, isn't it? It raises that important question. How do we as individuals contributing to these complex self-aware systems, how do we ensure this conscious hand on the tiller steers us towards a future aligned with collective wisdom, with broad societal benefit, long-term flourishing, rather than just isolated truths or narrow technical capabilities or the unexamined pursuit of progress for its own sake? What role will your capacity for second-order reflection, for asking those deep why questions, what role will it play in shaping the course of the ocean of self-awareness that is humanity?